Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. We have a lot to talk about because, well, I haven't been here in the last month. Give you a quick update on that. A couple things I want to make sure we talk about. The first is the Chad Daybell trial. It is finally here, ladies and gentlemen, of everything that's taken place 4 years later. We've been talking 4 years. We've been talking about this case. Finally, the trial is going to commence. We are in day 2 of the jury selection process. We'll talk about that and what to expect. You know, the prosecutor has 4 attorneys over there, plus all their support staff, and it's just Chad Daybell and Mr. Pryor, all there by himself. And of course, Bryan Kohberger. Let's touch on what we want to talk about, Bryan Kohberger, okay? Everyone got their feathers all ruffled up when the prosecutors filed a motion to basically complaining, judge, they're trying to influence the jurors, wah. And the judge didn't know what the hell was going on, so he said, basically, everybody stop doing whatever you're doing. Let's figure out what's going on. And of course, the prosecutor files a bunch of motions, had it sealed. The defense is like, are you kidding me? My client is on trial for capital murder, and you are interfering with my client's rights to make sure he has a constitutionally fair trial, which includes an unbiased jury. And therefore, why are you interfering with this? So there's a hearing set for April 4th. There are a couple motions that were filed today, so we'll talk about that. We can also talk about the George Kelly trial, the case of the rancher, the 75-year-old rancher down there in Arizona who kills the guy on his property. So that is, I think, going to be an interesting trial. I think we're on day 6 of that one today. Medical examiner testified today. I think the defense attorney tried to get a little too cute with some of her examples. It was a good cross, but I'm not sure she got out of it what she was looking for. So let's get to it. First, everybody, thanks for joining us. Uncivil Law is in the house. Maybe we can have Frank do that. We'll see. Maybe we can get Frank. He's just stepped out here a second. All right. So first, where have I been? Where have I been? Just got done, finished last Tuesday doing a jury trial. It started March 4th. So it went to its 4th week. And it was a marathon. This would have been a 5-week trial, basically under any other judge. We had a judge. She's a very good judge. I knew her when she was an investigator, a prosecutor, and now she's a judge. Very, very fine person, very good judge. No complaints. We got a fair trial. We came up second place in this particular trial, but it was a tough set of facts. And so anyway, our days usually start at 8. The jury would go home at 5. We would have, the mid-morning break, about 10 to 15 minutes. We would have a 45-minute break during lunch, but of course there are usually a time or something that we had to discuss with the judge or we had to take care of in the case over that time period. So I calculated over the 3 weeks in trial, we went out to lunch once, and that was to Subway. Once we went to have lunch and we were immediately called back for a case. So no, we did not win. Like I said, we came in second place. It was a marathon. One night we were there till 9 p.m. I literally thought this is not gonna be a problem. I do trials all the time. We'll be done by 5. 3 weeks, 30 some odd witnesses. One of the attorneys in my office co-counseled, but I think of the 30 some odd witnesses, I did all but 2. So let's just say there was a lot. The lovely Miss Kristen had an event for her kid's celebration of turning 21. We were going to go to Vegas. She's like, "You're not going." I'm like, "Oh, I'm going. I'm going." No, didn't go. Had too much stuff going on. And then, but just to show you, we call it the way it is. Like I said, it was a tough facts in a case. But, you never like seeing your name in the paper when you lose. Okay. And this was, I guess, actually one of the TV stations in town, but Denver prosecutors anticipate historic human trafficking sentence following conviction. Oh, yeah. Anyway, what they don't tell you is that we got some great appellate issues. We anticipated something along this lines in light of the evidence. So, but hey, we tell it the way it is. You can't win them all. I wish I did. But what can you do? What can you do? It was a marathon, ladies and gentlemen. It was a marathon. So anyway, we're back, and I assure you this is much more fun. So let's get into real quick. Chad Daybell, the jury selection has started. Little monotonous. I think the judge could probably handle it a little differently, but hey, he's the judge. That's why he gets paid the big bucks, and he is doing it the way he wants to do it. They're bringing in a group of jurors. I'm assuming there's 12 in a group since we don't get to see the jurors, and they sit in the jury box. And the prosecution and the defense gets to do kind of a little general voir dire. They're both kind of pitching their theory of the case. When's the conspiracy start? When does it end? Are you in for a penny, in for a pound? Hey, who doesn't want to be here? Those general type of questions. And they look for hardships. Like, hey, someone raises their hands. Hey, I can't be out of work for 10 weeks. I got childcare issues. I take care of somebody, etc. So we got a lot of that. Then we have issues. Then we have issues regarding bias and pre-trial publicity. A lot of people are just like, I've read about it. I've watched the documentaries. I have formed an opinion. Get them out of here. And then the final area that the judge talks to them about individually is the question of whether they could impose the ultimate sentence if there was a conviction, right? It's a death penalty case. The jury decides whether death is warranted. So, there were some people that said, I'm generally opposed to the death penalty, but I think I could impose it if it was an option that I had to consider. Needless to say, the defense tried to keep that witness. The prosecution tried to get rid of that particular witness. The prosecution doesn't want anybody on the jury panel that could be sympathetic to some sort of mitigation if it gets ultimately to the sentencing phase. And it's always weird in a death penalty case that they're qualifying the jury for death, which is the sentencing, before the facts have been even heard. And I've seen cases, Colorado doesn't have the death penalty anymore, but there was a death penalty case. It was out in Adams County years ago. And the judge dismissed a bunch of charges at the halftime at motion for judgment of acquittal. And I think ultimately the guy was found guilty of second-degree murder. So it, sometimes that happens, but normally the prosecution thinks they have a pretty good case. And obviously, during the voir dire process, it's to try and find out who is going to be a fair and impartial jury. Obviously, the prosecution wants to get rid of any potential jurors that they believe are going to be favorable to the defense. Would they say vote for life instead of death? The defense is obviously trying to get rid of jurors that they believe are going to be favorable to the prosecution and more likely to impose the death penalty if there is in fact a conviction. Some of the line of questioning was, if somebody asks, do you believe the death penalty is always warranted if somebody is convicted of first-degree murder? And if the people were questioned about that, and they said, well, no, I mean, it's certainly an option, but I'm willing to consider it. It's based upon the law and the facts of each case. And I think most of the jurors were like, well, I support the death penalty. But I'm not saying it's appropriate in every case, and that they'd be willing to, they could say yes or no on that. So therefore, those jurors were qualified. Now, a couple things that came up, I think it was in today's proceedings, apparently because the prosecution has a bunch of resources, they always do, and they're going through and they're running NCIC reports on every potential juror. And I should probably know what NCIC stands for, but it's National Crime. Does it stand for? I should probably know that. National Crime Information Center. That's the criminal records database that allows criminal agencies to enter or search for information about people that may have a conviction. And so the prosecution has been running an NCIC background check, basically, on every potential juror. I hope none of them have warrants. So anyway, it came out during this process that the prosecution was doing this, and the defense is now going to be provided a copy of the NCIC background check on all of the jurors. Now, normally, let's face it, you don't get the opportunity to run background checks on potential jurors. Usually the clerk says, here's the list of jurors. The jurors will be in here next 5 minutes, and you're seating a jury, and you'll have a jury seated in the next couple of hours. Very unlikely you have any time whatsoever to do that. But when you get the lists a week before, 2 weeks before, you can do all the background checking that you want. Now, the prosecutors in their little voir dire spiel, it's all about, hey, we can't tell you who actually killed the kids, but this is a conspiracy, so we don't have to. Can you go along with that, follow the law? She's not wrong. The whole question then for the defense is, well, what if you didn't know that there was a conspiracy? We're just Chad Daybell, doop-de-doop-de-doop, walking along and had no idea what was taking place whatsoever. That is going to be the defense. Mark my words. Now, of course, the prosecution jumped up and down when Mr. Pryor, John Pryor, tried to go into certain issues about conspiracy the other day, and then the prosecution jumps up and does it themselves today. So I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a little bitter after, being in trial for 3 weeks, but I just find that kind of stuff just petty. All right. This process could be a little faster. Bring in all 600 jurors, take them down to the local gym or something, have them fill out their questionnaires, tell them when to come back. But you go through all the jurors. This one says it can't be fair. Poof. Why waste their time? Why waste the court time talking with them individually? Just get rid of them, right? One of the jurors today was a police officer. I never think I've done a jury trial in any jurisdiction where police officers were not automatically excused. In this particular case, not only was the guy a police officer, he had worked with one of the investigators or attorneys on the case. Why did the prosecutor not say, hey, Judge, I've worked with this individual. We move to move them for cause. It just wouldn't be fair. But they didn't. And it's stuff like that just thinks, come on. Did you really think you were going to keep with a police officer who's worked with the people on the prosecution team in the past? Like, why would you even try, right? You got 600 other jurors coming in. Just let it go. So that's the process. It's moving quite slow. The court ended today at 1 p.m. there in Idaho. So that's Pacific time. Easy for me to say. And then they were going to meet at 2, the attorneys and the Judge Boyce, to go over more juror questionnaires. Okay, why don't you just strike the people that can't be fair and impartial? Now, what they're doing is they got to get down to the 12 jurors plus 6 alternates. And so they have to have enough people that are qualified to meet all the general qualifications, that can be fair and impartial, reserve judgment till they hear all the evidence, follow the court's instructions, and be willing to impose the death penalty if the circumstances warrant that. So roughly, we were doing the math a little bit earlier. You need at least 18 jurors, 12 plus the 6. I think what I was calculating was they would get, you get 7 peremptories plus another peremptory for each alternate. So that'd be 13. And so if everybody exercised all those, I came up with 44, but I think they were talking about getting to 50 jurors. So what they'll do is they'll have those 50 jurors and say, these are our prospective jurors. Then they'll do another kind of general voir dire with them. Then they'll do peremptory challenges. Peremptory challenges you can use on anyone for any reason, unless, of course, you're the prosecution. Then you can't get rid of somebody for a race-based issue. Not really at issue here because, well, Chad Daybell is about as the biggest white guy as you can possibly come up with. So that won't be an issue. It's going to be simply who do they like? Who do they think is going to give them a fair shake indeed? So there you go. I just thought to myself, I forgot to welcome everybody. We're not only here on YouTube this evening, we're on Twitch, Facebook, Rumble, and X. We're practically everywhere. The Crime Talk Network is everywhere. Oh, and aren't we on Roku too, Frank?
Yes.
Roku as well.
Yeah.
Roku as well. Right. And what?
No, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was talking to Frank, the hardest working man in show business, sitting behind the screen back there, and he's got more screens than you could possibly imagine in front of himself, keeping everything running. And we also have a special guest in the house tonight. That's right. We have the lovely Miss Kristen and Miss Winnie the Bulldog. They arrived. It's taken them a little while to come back because one time Winnie was squeaking her ball, and I was like, could you take her outside? And, well, anyway, let's just say Winnie is much, much better behaved. And we didn't kick them out regardless of what they think. We didn't kick them out. They've always been welcome. They could come back anytime. All right. So that's the Chad Daybell matter. Let's talk about Bryan Kohberger really quick, and then we'll get to the questions tonight. All right, everybody. And hey, Frank, I see Uncivil Law. If he's still here, is he still here? Do you want to send him a link, see if he wants to join us real quick? And see, I think he's following the other case as well. Let's see here. Anyway, all right, so let's talk about this Bryan Kohberger thing, okay? This is just, I think it's petty, petty, petty. This is like the pettiness in the Richard Allen case in Indiana, where the prosecutor is trying to have contempt issues as it relates to the defense because somebody came in without permission of the attorneys, took some photographs of some things that they shouldn't have taken some photographs of, and the attorneys for the prosecution want to hold them in contempt. And of course, Judge Francis C. Gull wants to hold them in contempt as well. Frankly, I think it's petty that the prosecution even wants to go forward with that now. Do it at the end of the case. But, you know, that's sometimes what petty prosecutors do. They do petty, petty things. So, Bryan Kohberger's case, does it rise to the level of pettiness? Perhaps. Okay. So let me give the background a little bit. Okay. As you all know, Bryan Kohberger is charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary. The state of Idaho has given notice that they are seeking the death penalty for Bryan Kohberger. As you know, that seems reasonable, right? You allegedly commit 4 cold-blooded murders. You're kind of getting into that whole death penalty zone if your state still has the death penalty. Seems kind of straightforward to me. Some people took offense when I said the defense was just doing what they're supposed to be doing. So anyway, the defense says at some point, and they filed a motion to change venue. And there's a motion hearing that's going to be set in the future as it relates to change of venue. Now, we've talked about change of venue on this channel many times, okay? And normally a change of venue, I mean, it's one of the first things the client will say is, well, we need a change of venue. Well, no. The crime needs to be prosecuted in the jurisdiction and where it is. Well, I'm not going to get a fair trial here. Well, yes, you are. I guarantee you, big jurisdiction, nobody knows what your case is about. Now, then you go to a smaller jurisdiction, and then it gets a little more reasonable as to whether there's going to be a change of venue. But 99% of the time, the judge is like, well, that's really interesting, but let's go through voir dire and let's see if we can seat a jury. And if we can seat the jury, no problem, right? Small town, everybody knows everybody. Everybody's familiar with the facts, right? The question is, can they listen to the evidence, withhold judgment till they hear all the evidence in the case, then follow the law, right? Just because you are familiar with the facts of the case doesn't disqualify you. It's only if you've formed an opinion as to the defendant's guilt. All right. So normally that's what takes place. Like I said, I think in my nearly 30 years of practicing law, one change of venue trial was ever granted. It started off in Telluride, but it was in the same judicial district, what they call Montrose, and it was a double dead baby case. And you know, I remember we were out there. I mean, we were extended period of time, and I remember the associate that was doing the case with me at the time. We're out there having dinner. I'm like, hey, just anecdotally, let's ask the waiter what do you think, or the waitress. She's like, oh yeah, everybody talks about that case. It's the only thing the local radio station covers, and everybody listens to that radio station. Oh, that guy's so guilty. They're all guilty. There were like 5 people charged. And like, ooh, okay, well, that's good. That's good. And, same thing. I remember we're flying Crime Talk 1 out of the Telluride airport. Got some great video of that, I might add, too. And same thing. Ask them, hey, just anecdotally, they're asking, like, hey, how long are you going to be in town? I'm like, oh, I'll be back quite a bit. Kind of a big thing going on here. And I said, just out of curiosity, have you heard of this case? And I'm like, oh, my God, yes. The Norwood murders. Oh, my God, yes. Terrible. They're all guilty. Something I got a pretty good motion for change of venue. I mean, it's anecdotal, but yeah, I mean, not scientific. Filed the motion, and then the judge was like, oh, we're moving it on her own motion. And we went to Montrose County, brought in like 600 jurors. I mean, it was huge. And we found qualified jurors where they probably found my client guilty. Rule of thumb, I guess, if there's going to be 2 dead people on a piece of property where you are not necessarily near those children, you're on the other part of the property, close enough for government's work. You have dead kids, somebody's got to go to prison. But hey, what can you do? That's why we have trials, right? Anyhow, so in this particular case, normally, if you want to do a change of venue, you have to have some sort of data, some empirical data that explains why the defendant cannot receive a fair trial because of news publicity. So I think the defense motion, we can go through it, but the prosecution was like, we got a call from somebody who called the police that got a phone call asking about the facts of the case. And there were things that she didn't know about. So she contacted the police because we thought that was in violation of the gag order. Oh my God. Right? So you got some Karen out there that's, oh my God. So of course the prosecutor's like, oh my God. They're obviously trying to taint the jury pool by sending robocalls like it's like an election phone call or something. Ridiculous. But then, of course, the police have to investigate. So they turn it over to the sheriff's office, and they find 2 more people that have been contacted. Oh, my God. Right? A lot of people got upset with me last week when I was like, the defense was doing what they're entitled to do. People are like, oh my God, Scott, they're tainting the jury. You don't know what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're right. I'm wrong. Whatever. You got your opinion. Let me know how many change of venue cases you've ever tried, right? We'll see, right? So the prosecution files their motion saying, oh my God, this is terrible. Stop them, judge, stop them. The judge doesn't know what the heck's going on, puts a kibosh to it, says, everybody stop. We'll have a hearing on this. The prosecution then says, whoa, judge, you can't do this. You're violating my client's constitutional right to a fair trial. You're violating his due process rights. You can't do this without first holding a hearing. Then, the defense files some stuff. The prosecution takes umbrage with the recitation of the case because they reached out and they contacted the lead counsel, Mr. Kohberger, and she's like, yeah, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you when I'm in town, next week. What's the problem? She's like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. We've done this before on death penalty cases. Never been a problem until the prosecutor, who really, really wants to keep this case in Latah County, doesn't want to move it. Why? Because it's expensive. And what do we know, ladies and gentlemen? It's always about the money, right? So prosecutor files his motion. Judge sets it for a hearing. I believe it's actually set for the 4th. Let me just double check that so that I don't misspeak. Yep. Oh, no, there's one on May 14th, but I think there was another one coming up. Here it is. Let me just double check. April 4th at 1:30. So Thursday afternoon, 1:30. The defense has made arrangements to have their expert witness, Bryan Edelman, Dr. Bryan Edelman, PhD, and he is their expert witness, and he is going to be called in regards to the jury survey that was being conducted in support of the defense motion to change venue. And so the expert witness is going to explain to the judge, and apparently to the prosecutor as well, explain to them the survey process, the content of the survey questions, the size of the survey, and the impact on the halted work. Now, I do believe, if I had to look into the magic 8-ball crystal ball here, I do believe that the court is going to say, oops, I guess we got it wrong. Sorry about that. Now, if I was the defense, and if this has screwed up the timeline or budget for the public defender, I would ask for sanctions against the prosecutor because they're being petty, okay? And I've tried to be pretty darn fair to everybody. I've called out the defense in the Kohberger case. I thought the prosecution, I hate to say it, small town, they don't have the resources. All this stuff should have been turned over years ago. We were the first case first come, and they're still turning stuff over because they can't get around to it quick enough. So, like I said, there's a hearing coming up for that, April 4th, so this Thursday afternoon. And the the defense, I thought was pretty good. It says the state's objection and declaration of defendant's motion to rescind the order of the court filed on March 22nd confirms it knew by March 8th of the survey. The state knew by March 11th the survey was being conducted by a legitimate company. By March 21st, 2024, the defense had explained basis and validity of the survey, yet Friday afternoon, the state filed a motion alleging violation of the revised non-dissemination order. This was the first mention the state made of such an allegation. The afternoon filing on March 22nd, 2024 was done with the intention of obtaining an immediate order without a hearing. Of note, due to the bias and interconnectivity in Latah County, citizens called police and the prosecutors about the survey. The ability of a prosecutor to have an order signed by a judge within the same building within a few hours of the filing, and a specific fear the defense had articulated to the state during the March 2021-24 hearing is evidence of the state's intention to facilitate a due process violation. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 13 of the Idaho State Constitution, protects Mr. Kohberger's rights. He is entitled to meaningful notice and a meaningful opportunity to be heard. That did not happen. The state points to the court to State v. Head for the proposition that since Mr. Kohberger had received a copy of the state's pleading and responded with an objection and a request to provide further briefing to the court, Mr. Kohberger received due process. In Head, the case, the defendant was given multiple hearings and a 90 days to respond to the civil proceedings. Reference to Head illustrates the significance of the constitutional deprivation of Mr. Kohberger. Even more significant is the case of Nye v. Castelometes, Katsilometes, a 2019 case. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment prohibits deprivation of life, liberty, or property without fundamental fairness through governmental conduct that offends the community's sense of justice, decency, and fair play. Procedural due process is the aspect of due process relating to the minimal requirements of notice and a hearing. It is the deprivation of significant life, liberty, or property interest may occur. Mr. Kohberger's life and liberty are at stake. This is a capital case, and he's entitled to be heard on motions pending before this court. Halting preparations for this motion for change of venue denies his constitutional right to a fair trial. The survey work is complete for Latah County, and it shows that the jury pool in Latah County is biased. The state's action that resulted in the secession of the survey prevents other county comparisons. The order should be reversed now and in the future, and no court order should be entered without procedural due process unless the parties so stipulate. And I've taken a couple of whacks at Miss Taylor, the lead attorney for Bryan Kohberger. She is totally right. Once again, small town politics, small town judicial system, everybody's in the same building. Yeah, on Friday afternoon, I'm going to go file an ex parte motion saying you're going to serve it via the electronic service, and yet the judge signs it without any further investigation or word from the defense. He goes ahead and signs it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable to me. And then the court says, well, just stop it. Nobody does anything else. This is legitimate stuff. This doctor that is going to be testifying, he is a PhD. And let's just take a look at his curriculum vitae, right? Because nobody has resumes anymore. It's curriculum vitae. I am Brian Edelman, solely, sincerely, and truly declare as follows. I am the co-founder of Trial Innovations, a national full-service jury research firm. I have worked as a trial consultant for 20 years and have conducted pretrial and post-trial research on both criminal and civil cases across the country. I've been retained as an expert in over 70 high-profile cases to assess the impact of pretrial publicity on the fairness of trial proceedings, including the state of Idaho versus Jonathan Renfro, state of Idaho, Gilbert Rodriguez, state of Idaho versus James Holmes, state of Idaho versus Robert Bowers, state of Florida versus Nicholas Cruz, and United States v. David DePape. Counsel for the defendant and Kohberger retained me to research and evaluate whether there was extensive and prejudicial pretrial publicity surrounding the killing of 4 students attending the University of Idaho in Moscow. The community panic that ensued, the search for the suspect, which ended with Bryan Kohberger's arrest. 2, to determine if the media coverage has impacted the defense's ability to obtain a fair and impartial jury in Latah County. 3, whether community residents in alternate venues exhibited similar bias. And 4, based on the findings, recommend appropriate remedial measures, for example, a change of venue to protect Mr. Kohberger's ability to be tried by a fair and impartial jury. As a part of my analysis, I evaluated relevant newsprint, television, and social media coverage surrounding these events and conducted a community attitude survey of 400 residents in Latah County. Comparison survey in the alternative venues have yet to be completed. These surveys were designed to assess case recognition, familiarity with prejudicial media content, and bias. It goes on here about his qualifications. He's received his master's and PhD in social psychology from the University of Nevada, Reno, and an LLM from the University of Kent in the United Kingdom. Graduate studies provided me with a broad foundation of qualitative and quantitative research methodologies and statistics. It goes into the research experience that he has, the jury research experience, the venue experience that he has, his expert witness, and the influence of attitude of cognition. Pretrial publicity, he states, can have a prejudicial effect on jurors through its impact on the formation of attitudes and belief that they bring into the courtroom. Attitudes are not isolated entities, but are often linked to other memories, experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. And these links can create large networks of attitudes which are resistant to change. The links between attitudes strengthen with repeated activation. As these links strengthen, the probability increase that the attitudes and underlying beliefs will be consistent with one another and brought to awareness simultaneously. Attitudes are strongly linked to one another and more easily accessible in memory and more likable to be automatically activated with exposure with the attitude object. It goes on. Talks about the body of research within the social science that attempts to address the impact of pretrial publicity on decision-making in the courtroom, and the literature suggests that pretrial publicity influences evaluations of the defendant, perceptions of criminality, sympathy toward the defendant, pretrial judgments regarding guilt, and final verdicts. And then he cites his sources and goes on and on and on. The telephone survey at issue. The survey of 400 residents was conducted in Latah County. The sample size of 400 was calculated via a power analysis to reach an industry standard 95% confidence interval of plus or minus 5% using the most conservative response distribution, 50%. Comparison surveys were planned in 2 alternate counties to assess if potential bias found in Latah County carried over to the rest of the state. The survey instrument used in this case adheres to industry standards established by the American Association of Public Opinion Research and the Change of Venue Survey Professional Code established by the American Society of Trial Consultants. The survey instrument, topics of focus, and questions were constructed after reading more than 269 articles that referenced the murder in the Moscow Pullman Daily News, the Idaho Argonaut, and the Spokesman Review. Steps were taken regarding the structure and flow of the instruments and design of the question to mitigate potential threats to internal validity, including response bias and order effects. All of the questions in the survey instrument, including the media recognition items criticized by the government, were carefully selected based on how pervasive each item was in the coverage. None of the media recognition items included any information that was not widely reported and available in the public domain. Why is that significant? Because they were all in a tizzy because the person that got the call heard some information they hadn't heard before, even though it was already in the public information. So, unbelievable. The survey was conducted at Consumer Public Opinion, business-to-business market research. They've been in business for some 36 years. They've done it in 49 states. The screener of the survey, etc. Respondents who refused to participate in the survey were not called again. To successfully win a change of venue, the defendant needs to demonstrate that media coverage has generated bias in the community that undermines his or her constitutional rights to a fair trial. The standard method of measuring pre-judgment and fixed opinions within a venue is a community attitude survey. And they go on to basically say that they have done everything they did. They include a copy of his CV, and there you go. Okay. The prosecutors in the Bryan Kohberger case need to put on the big boy pants, just like the prosecutors do in Indiana, and focus on trying your case. I hope when this hearing goes on Thursday afternoon, and they will more than likely call this expert witness, whatever his name was again. I'm sorry, I forgot his name already. But Dr. Bryan Edelman, to go through what I just read you. And I hope the court says, you know what, boy, I was wrong. I shouldn't be granting ex parte motions, delaying these proceedings, because I got an overzealous, namby-pamby little prosecutor over there who apparently takes his investigative leads from a bunch of Karens that are concerned that they got a phone call on a survey. And the prosecutor should know what they were doing. The defense attorneys explained to them what they were doing, and yet they did it anyway. That, ladies and gentlemen, is amateur hour at the Latah County Prosecutor's Office. Can't say anything more about it. Go focus on getting your witnesses and your trial ready, Mr. Prosecutor. They're doing what they need to do. And everybody got all pissed at me last week when I said the defense is doing what they're supposed to do. I don't know what the big deal is. Okay? I'm telling you, this is what they were supposed to do. How do you think they do it? You think the defense attorneys do anecdotal? Well, like me, well, Judge, I talked to people at the FBO and I talked to somebody at the restaurant, and they were both rather convinced that my client was guilty. That's total anecdotal nonsense, right? That's why they call it anecdotal. It doesn't mean anything. They need to, it's an example, but it doesn't necessarily show that it is part of the bigger picture. So you have to present analysis. You have to present, what do they call that? Oh, science? Oh, geez. Yeah, you have to say, let's make sure the questions are okay. Let's call the number of people so that we can get within this accuracy rate. And then you got the prosecutors that go and do this. Go focus on your case, right? You think Bryan Kohberger is guilty of committing burglary and 4 premeditated murders? You know what the prosecutor should be saying? I don't care where you send this trial, Judge. Certainly, we would like to keep it here in Latah County, but if you send it over to Ada County, the big one with Boise in it, right? As we've learned from Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, I don't care where you send me, Judge. My evidence is so overwhelming of Mr. Kohberger's guilt. I'll take 8. You just give me 12 people, and that's it. And that's what a good prosecutor should be saying. But instead of saying, like I've told this story before. I've told it probably too many times. All our regular people will probably have heard this before. Young prosecutor, right? I'm in the military. And in the military, it's kind of like you have to, the defense has to request stuff from the prosecution. Like, hey, can I please have this? Can I please have this? Blah, blah, blah. Can I go interview this witness? It's going to cost you money, but it comes out of your budget, blah, blah, blah. Young prosecutor, we don't need to give that. Well, thinking, we're not tell them that. We're going to play games. And my boss at the time, a very good man, he says, you know what? No, we don't play games like that. We're going to give them whatever they want, and we're still going to convict their client because we don't go around charging innocent people. We think he's guilty. We believe our evidence is overwhelming to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt, and that is what we are going to do. Okay? And in all due respect, running off saying, oh my God, you're doing this, that sounds like something the defense does to create little red herrings and create issues where, hey, if they're working on that, they're not working on preparing their case. Now you got the prosecutor not working on their case, and then the defense is still moving forward. So it just shows how petty it truly is. So I know some people didn't like that opinion. Wouldn't be the first time that we've upset people, but hey, we are here to call balls and strikes. If the prosecution does a good job, we're going to call them out on it. If they do a bad job, we're going to call them out on it. And same thing with the defense. Some of the stuff the defense has been trying to do the whole grand jury stuff, I don't get it. I think it's a waste of time. And everybody said it is such a waste of time. So I just don't see it as a, we'll just call balls and strikes. Right now, they're a couple years into this thing. Let's focus on trial. Let's get a date set, even if it's in 2025, which is, we're already in April, ladies and gentlemen. April. Set a date. February 1st. I don't know if that's a weekday. The first full work day in February. Set it for 10-week trial. Everybody better be ready. That's what the judge needs to do in the Bryan Kohberger case, and stop dealing with this petty stuff. And, stuff like this, Mr. Prosecutor, your job is to protect the record. You look like a little biatch. That's what it comes across as. Really, it does. Petty stuff. All right. Well, I'm glad I got that off my chest. All right. Enough about me. Let's talk about you all for a while. Let's see some questions. Frank, were you able to see if Uncivil Law wanted to join us really quickly? Uncivil Law, check your email, man. I saw you on your chat, and it's been a while since we chatted. I tuned into you one day. It was great. I saw that you were over 100,000 subs too. So good for you. Congratulations. All right, let's take a look at some of the questions here. Let's see here. Judge said right out of his own mouth, I don't want to travel for this trial. Oh, okay, Your Honor. That's more important than a fair trial. Yeah. Judge, you can't ignore the scientific data, right? And, wait till okay, Judge, you don't want to grant that motion, or you're going to deny it without prejudice so the defense can renew it when we do voir dire and we shut the entire town down, and you find that you cannot get a fair and impartial jury. There you go. Do you think Judge Boyce wanted to travel from the eastern part of Idaho to the western part of Idaho so that he could do two trials? No, I don't think he did. It was an inconvenience and a great expense to everybody. But he did that to assure that the defense got a fair trial. And we saw Lori Vallow was properly convicted after a fair trial. And there you go. I think there's a couple of issues on appeal, but we're not going to get into that tonight. All right. But for the most part, it was a pretty fair trial. All right. So just remember that. Judge, just do it. And like I said, it's just petty. Let's see here. Man, not a whole lot of comments tonight. If you've never lost a case, you haven't tried many, speaking as a 30-year attorney. Oh, I've lost lots of cases. Don't get me wrong. I win. I'm on kind of a losing streak right now. It's like, Your Honor, I'd like to buy a good fact for 100, please. Oh, sorry. You get no good facts, but an unreasonable client, and we're going to go to trial, Mr. Reich. Congratulations. Have a seat. Let's go. That's what I've gotten lately. All right. Yes. If you've 8NIN8. Not familiar with 8N1N8. But anyway, yes, I have lost a bunch of trials over the years, and they've been some doozies. Big numbers type cases. But oftentimes, particularly in my younger days, I would get the call from the judge saying, I'm going to point you to this case because I know it can get done. Because either A, you can get along with the client, or B, If not, either way, we're going to go get this case tried because it needs to be tried. So yeah, no, I've lost. The people that said they never lost a case, really? I mean, maybe a civil guy, if you're not a real criminal defense lawyer, if you haven't lost cases, okay, all the odds are stacked against you. That's what makes it all the more challenging, right? And then, even when as a rational individual, you're thinking, there's no way this case should be going to trial. But the offer or was unreasonable, or the client doesn't want to accept it. And next thing you know, you're going to trial. And then you get into trial psychosis. All right. Where literally you're thinking, okay, all they've got is 10 witnesses that saw the entire event went down. It's on video. They've got a confession and they've got DNA. And what you're thinking is so what you're telling me is there's a chance, right? That's how you have to go into trial. You're in that trial psychosis mode. You have checked yourself into the penthouse suite of the psychosis hotel to make sure that you are ready to go. Because if a jury doesn't think that you're believing what you're selling, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They're not going to buy it. So there you go. Let's see. Did P. Diddy, didn't he call you, Scott? No, but P. Diddy have some recent experience in some human trafficking cases. Call me. Sounds expensive. So yeah, there you go. It's going to be very expensive. Chris H, always like a nice little comment there. Don't we like that? Scott, it's good to hear you again. My wife and I love your live streams. I'm sorry it's been so long. Me too. Like I said, I really thought I was going to do that. I look over here and I see the lovely Miss Kristen and even Frank. Didn't I say, Frank? Oh, I got this. I'll just do a live stream from home or something. It'll be I'll do a daily show. What's the problem? It's not going to be a problem. I don't know. When was the earliest I ever got home? The lovely Miss Kristen? I don't know. It seemed like maybe 8. 8 was an early night, which is not, that's not bad. But when you've been literally awake since 4:30, didn't sleep, in court all day, no sleep, no food. Yeah, you become not a very fun person. Not fun at all. I would come to the office on the weekends to, check the mail and things like that. The classic question, peeps. Scott, do you defend clients you believe are guilty? I know you may find this hard to believe, but I have even won clients' trials where I thought they were guilty. Yes, that's my job as a criminal defense attorney, right? It's not about whether you think the client is guilty or not. It is only whether the prosecution can prove the elements of the case. Remember, when they say, oh, the defense won, what they really should be saying is the prosecution failed. They failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is what it boils down to. It wasn't some loophole, all right? The Constitution of the United States of America is not a loophole. Okay, a fair trial, a right to a jury trial, due process of law is not a loophole. It simply is not. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that doesn't mean that let's see here. Thanks for the question, Pete. Yes, I mean, I'm a criminal defense attorney. You think I ever had clients walk in and say, hey, I've done it. I did it. Everything they say in there is true. Get me a reasonable offer or we're just going to go to trial. Okay. And you go try the case. Your client can come in and tell you that. You're absolutely, I did it 100%. It's on video. They got 10 witnesses. And the defendant has an absolute right to make the prosecution prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I remember I had a case years ago. We even to this day, the prosecutor, who is now a judge, we 32, then travels down the road and goes into a grocery store and tries to grab something and pulls a gun and shoots a security guard, an armed security guard there. And it's on video. It's on video. And my clients, it's just like, man, that ain't me. That ain't me. And you're like, okay, well, I'm your attorney. I'm going to do everything I can for you. But I want to tell you something. I'm telling you, I think that kind of looks like you. I think a reasonable jury would say, that looks like you. That ain't me, man. That ain't me. Okay. So, I try to get, creative and take a picture to mom. Say, hey, is this your baby? She's like, that ain't my baby. That ain't my baby. I know my baby, and that ain't my baby. And so it's on video on one and not so good on the other. And, I'm like, oh, they put they didn't even get the fingerprints, or they didn't get the DNA off the bottle to say it was my guy. You can't believe anything. Oh my gosh, they didn't fail to prove their case. And first I remember the prosecutor gets up and says, you know what DNA stands for? Don't need any. I just got to smile like, that was good. That was good. That was in his close there, his second close. And I was like, that was good. And even to this day, we still chuckle about that because it was such a classic moment. And I ultimately, I had to put my client's mom on the stand, and I go, ma'am, I want to show you this picture. Take a look at Defense Exhibit A. It has previously been admitted into evidence. Will you take a look at that photo, ma'am? And will you tell me if that's your baby? Mom looks at a photo. Oh my God. That ain't my baby. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you can't believe a mom to say that ain't her baby, who can you believe? You know who they did believe? The man that got shot through his spine and was a paraplegic, right? I swear to God, this trial, the DA and the judge, who's since retired, but I saw him once, still remembers this case. All right, and then we're gonna have to end. But I'm telling you, this was this case. It was just, it had classic moments. So they bring in the guy that gets shot. He's, shot through the spine or something, but he's in a wheelchair, right? And he's in one of those big wheelchairs that has like the really high back, because I think he can't move anything. He can like move his finger, right? And he comes in with his little chair, and he moves the chair with his little finger, and he comes into court, turns around to the jury, right? Looks at him. Prosecutor asks him some questions. Let's talk about the day in question. Yeah, what happened? Zoom, and I got shot. They had never done a photo array of this guy beforehand, right? To see if he could pick out, the defendant, my client. And so the prosecutor goes, Mr. Victim, will you please take a look around this room and see if you see the man who shot you? And so he's sitting there in his high wheelchair because he's paraplegic, and at least he can use his finger, right? So he's kind of sitting here. The lovely Miss Kristen is like, oh my God, this is how you got to tell the story. All right. This is how you got to tell the story. So he's sitting there in his chair, and the guy's never really looked over to the defense table. So I'm like, okay, this is good, right? Okay. He didn't look at my guy and like, oh, there he is, right? So he looks, and first he kind of moves his wheelchair around, and he looks over, and he looks at the court staff, and he focuses on them, looks to the jury. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to pick a juror. Like, this is great. And all of a sudden he goes, and he looks again at the jurors. And I'm like, he's going to pick a juror. And then he goes, and he looks over to the prosecution table. And I'm thinking, he's going to pick a prosecutor. This is fabulous. Then all of a sudden he goes, and he looks right at the defense table. And with his one little finger, he points and says, that's the man that shot me. And of course, my client then jumps up and said, I didn't shoot you. It's not me. So we had the DNA. Don't need any. That ain't my baby. We got the guy in the wheelchair with the finger. That's the man that shot me, right? And then my client jumping up, and I'm like, oh, sit down. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't cause a mistrial. No, don't do that. Anyway, a jury of his peers promptly found him guilty. And yes, so lovely Miss Kristen is over here dying 1,000 deaths. I cannot believe you're telling this story. I mean, but the guy came in a wheelchair. I'm not being mean. I'm just, that's the way it was. And that's the way it was, like in there. And you're just like, he gonna pick it out. I mean, he literally like stares at the juror. Like I'm like, he's gonna pick a juror. This is fabulous. We're gonna win this thing. I think he's gonna pick a prosecutor. And then he gets there and he's just that little finger. That's the man that shot me. Ugh. I think that client got 169 years or something. I mean, as a young attorney, that was that was it was just devastating. Like, what else could I have done? But there wasn't anything, so right. No, I think he turned down 60 years. That was it. I think it was like 160. I mean, he got a stack of mine. Anyway, so that was it. All right, super chat. Let's see here. Let's super chat. Obviously, we don't beg for super chats, but we certainly appreciate them. Clumsy Clairvoyance. Are you going to go to the Delphi trial? That would be great. I would like to. And I have to do my I think his trial's in May, right? Is that right, Frank? May 17th? May 15th, I think. Anyway, I got to do a recurrency training for Crime Talk 1 at some point in May. So I did it last time in Indiana, so maybe I can go to Indiana. I don't know. Maybe I can get it done early. But either way, we would like to do that. Additionally, we flew out last year to the Lori Vallow trial. In fact, I still have my little ticket here. Hey, what was that? What was that museum you went to in Nevada with your kids? The lovely Miss Kristen, Zach Baggins. Do you think he would buy this ticket as a memorabilia? My admittance into the Lori Vallow trial overflow room. Take a look at that, ladies and gentlemen. I wonder if we should put that up on the market, see what that'd be worth. So the goal is also to try and get out to the Chad Daybell trial, maybe for a day or two. But yeah, I'd like to go to Indiana. I would love to see this Frances C. Gull. Her parents at least had a sense of humor, because apparently she doesn't. And I'd like to go out there, and I'd like to go to Ada County there in Idaho. And if Kohberger ever gets around to doing anything other than having little hissy fits as it relates to you can't contact the jurors to do what you're supposed to do. Oh my God. Jeez, what a bunch of little whiners. Jeez. just go try the case, man. Just go try the case. Don't drag it. Don't play a little nonsense of, well, the prosecution did this and blah. It's just petty. Everybody's doing their jobs. You have to operate from the assumption that the prosecutors are going to be ethical and the defense counsels are going to be ethical unless and until they prove otherwise. General rule of thumb, I think any good attorney will tell you this, is what I tell all my attorneys that have ever worked for me, even clients. Listen, you're a nice guy, right? But I've never met a client worth going to jail for, and I've never been paid enough money to jeopardize my law license for a client. So no, we're not going to do anything unethical. I will do everything I can to zealously and ethically represent you, but I will not break the law and I will not cross ethical bounds to do that. Like I said, you're a nice guy and all, but let's get for real. If things don't go like we hope they're going to go, first thing you're going to do is blame your attorney. Bottom line. So, why would I jeopardize my future for this guy that'll throw me under the bus the first time something doesn't go his way? Not going to happen. Okay. It's just the way it is. There's certain clients you don't go and see by yourself, right? You always have a witness, even if it's in your own office. Bring your paralegal in to take notes of the conversation. So there's never anything that could even be suggested that wasn't above board. And you always do confirming letters to memorialize conversations that you've had with clients, just the way it is. Hey, and if this doesn't accurately reflect what we talked about, let me know immediately. All right. Thank Chris H for a super chat as well. Not a question, but appreciate you there. Chris H, Clumbly Clairvoyance, and obviously our mod, Mama Pink. Appreciate everything you do. Glad to be back after your little vacation I gave you, because I hadn't had anything for anybody to do. Scott makes being a lawyer look fun. Some days it's the best job in the world. Other days you think, I don't know, I'm going to go work at Starbucks, man. Why am I doing this? Can you do the finger noise one more time?
No.
So he comes in his little wheelchair.
No.
We should be able to make a short out of that, don't you think, Frank? You've got your best. Let's see here. You can tell Scott loves being a lawyer most of the time. Yeah, most of the time. Some days, and like I said, I like most of my clients. I really, really do like most of my clients. But every now and then, man, there's one that you're just like, we're done. We can't do this anymore. It's just not worth the brain damage. Let's see. Nate Eaton said there was a bunch of press for Chad's trial. You couldn't see it in the courtroom. They don't have any overflow rooms. And it looks like basically just the prosecutor, maybe some family members there. There's nobody on Chad's side at all. I don't see a whole lot of press, but it's basically jury selection. Not exactly the most exciting stuff at all. And yes, Chad's lawyers do love to point out that there are 4 prosecutors. All the resources of the state of Idaho versus my poor little client, Chad Daybell, and me. That's all he's got, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to work it. That's what lawyers do. Don't get upset with him. He's working with what he's got. I don't think he has a whole lot of good facts, right? The oblivious new boyfriend defense may not carry the day. It may not carry the day. All right. Mama Pink said it, not me. Judge Gull doesn't want to get caught by the public. She's denied every motion that should have even at least had a hearing. Yeah. Let's see. Allegedly innocent. Let's see here. The prosecutors on the Kohberger case are absurd. Let's have the case in the summer because we share a parking lot. Damn. Let's just move the damn trial. Or are you afraid your case is weak to go to the big city? That's what I'm telling you, man. Good prosecutors are going to say, bring it on, judge. You tell me where. You tell me when. I'll bring my witnesses. I'll be ready to go. I'll meet my burden. That's what a good prosecutor does. They don't play little ticky-tack games. Frankly, that's what the defense is supposed to be doing, right? Not the prosecutors. Anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have done our hour or so here. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's our first one back after our little thing. Yes, and Mom Pink is right. Remember, the Constitution matters. Now, and I say that, and sometimes people are like, what is that supposed to mean, Scott? The Constitution matters? It does, ladies and gentlemen. It's the rules we have to play by. And you have to do what the rules say. The rules are spelled out. They're clear. They're simple. That's what the rules say you're supposed to do. It's the playbook that everybody's supposed to follow. Just like in a sporting game, you have the rules. Somebody's going to push it. Nope, you stepped over the line. You're out of bounds. You can't do that. And a lot of times people they just don't care. You know, you see those people on the street interviews where people couldn't tell you one of the, constitutional amendments, or, it would be okay if we got rid of freedom of speech. And you're just like, are you kidding me, ladies and gentlemen? Unbelievable. The Constitution does matter. And you got to like it all. And if you don't like a particular portion of it, there's a way to change it. Get 2/3 of the states to ratify any of the changes. So if you don't like something, go change it. Otherwise, that's the law of the land. You got to figure it out. Make sure you've left your DNA on that like button. I like that. Join our Patreon show. Yes, if you have not become a Patreon, we're going to do another show after this. Sometimes it depends. We go 30 minutes. Sometimes we go an hour. Just depends on how many people show up and if it's a good conversation. But it's their show because you're a Patreon. You pay a very small amount of money. I assure you it's not that much. And we send you some free, cool stuff if you're becoming a Patreon member. And, of course, you can call in and have a conversation with yours truly instead of me just talking and looking at the chats. It's always good to hear from our Patreon members. You're all so smart and just love the law as well. Anyway, my son is in a forced constitutional class right now. He loves it now, though. Of course he does. Most people have never read the Constitution. It's not that long. Look it up. You could even Google it, Constitution and amendments, make it read it to you. It's that simple. It's that simple. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We're going to jump over and do our Patreon show here in just a few minutes. We already ate, so we're good to go. So it's going to be a quick turnover here so we can get Frank out of here because he's been sitting behind watching all these trials for the last weeks or so. And he probably wants to get home to his wife and kids as well. All right. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you in the Patreon show in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining us. And yes, the Constitution does matter.